Hey guys, it's been a while, hasn't it? It's been a busy spring for sure. It's lacrosse season and Gracie's getting bigger and needs some more time outside, and it's a beautiful day here. But I always have For the Boys episodes kind of in the back of my mind. And so today I want to tell you a little bit about my experience over spring break a couple of weekends ago when I went up to Milwaukee, or actually Whitefish Bay, Wisconsin, to see your grandfather, Gary Martin. And he and I had been talking about this trip for a while because, as you know, he's into genealogy as well. And he had gathered a lifetime of different artifacts and papers and documentation and you name it from the Martin side of the family. And he wanted to be able to tell stories to me, to be able to go through all of these boxes, and to be able to really share kind of in his own For the Boys, but I was there, so it was for his daughter, to be able to, in his own words, be able to talk about these things and to tell stories and to just pass on. And you probably don't know this, but I do a lot of genealogy presentations about being intentional, about how parents and grandparents should be intentional about how they are telling these stories and how they are passing on the genealogy information. So this is exactly what Grandpa and I were doing. So we spent a Sunday afternoon, gosh, it was probably 6 or 7 hours sitting on his couch and going through these buckets of papers and pictures and, like I said, different artifacts. And, it was pretty incredible, all of the things that he was able to find and able to put together. And, it really was a special time for the two of us. And now I have so many different stories to be able to pass along to you in this format in For the Boys. So before I forget, I want to thank Grandpa Gary Martin and his partner Lynn for all of the different, buckets and organization and, everything that they did to put this all together. Thank, just everybody who, Dad and, Eric and Carly and everybody else who's involved in all of this to really be supportive of me telling you these stories and going out to other people telling the stories. There's a lot more to come. We have a lot of artwork to talk about from your great aunt, Grace Martin Taylor. But for now, we're going to concentrate on one particular artifact that we took from the Osborne side, which is your grandfather's mother, my grandmother, Mary Ruth Osborne. And it's a wonderful story. I think I've probably told it to you already. But again, being intentional, Grandpa wanted to tell the story, or I asked Grandpa to tell the story. And so we're going to see that film clip here in a minute. But I want to show you kind of what the artifact is first. And in fact, it is this picture frame. Okay, it is an old picture frame. It's a wooden frame. It is, obviously something that has a lot of age to it. In fact, it's probably from the 1920s. It's actually in pretty good condition. It's pretty cool because the picture frame actually swivels in this. And your grandpa has written a note to me just as a reminder of what this is and how he got to have it. But at some point in time, this portrait of your great-grandmother, Ruth Osborne Martin, was in this picture frame. And that's why this is such an incredible story. I love the story so much that just having the frame itself and a copy of the portrait is amazing to me. So before I tell too much of the story, I want to pass it along to your Grandpa Gary, who will tell the story of how he came across this picture frame. He was on a trip with his sister, my Aunt Kitty, your great Aunt Kitty, and he's going to tell it to you in his own words. So here he is. So what's the title of this box?
This is my father's box 1.
Okay.
You know what this is?
It looks like a frame.
This is the frame. You remember the story I told you about Kitty and I taking a roots trip
Yes.
to Bancroft,
Right.
and the fellow going out and whatever. When he brought it out from
The
the
picture
shed,
of your mom.
my mom,
Right.
this is the frame.
This is a frame that was
and
there.
that's yours to keep.
Oh,
And I think I wrote something like that
right.
here.
Thank you.
Sure.
This is amazing, and this. Do you want to tell that story? It's.
Sure,
I know.
sure.
I know. I've recounted it, and I think that you've written it before.
Yeah,
but I mean, it's such an amazing story, and I don't know. It's one of my favorites.
It gets to the personalities of those Appalachian people. When my father passed away in the year 2000, my sister and I, Kitty, decided to take what we called a roots, ROOTS, trip to try to find the areas in the houses that we remember as children. So one of the first places that we decided to go was Bancroft, which was talked about, and
which is right there on the Kanawha River.
Kanawha River. It's it's sort of the other side of the tracks type place now. Then I'm not sure how it was, but I mean you wouldn't just normally go down in there if you didn't have to. And one thing about people in southern Appalachia, we've talked before, they're the nicest people in the world if they know you, but if they don't know you, you really have to watch out because you don't go into their property without asking, or as we talked about, facing the business end of the shotgun. So Kitty and I went down there, and you're in an area where if you don't drive a pickup truck, you're not quite right in the head, you've got a problem. And if you drive a foreign car, you're a damn communist.
Yeah, and what were you driving?
A new silver Audi, and probably the only Audi in that county.
Yeah.
So we pull up to looking for my grandmother's house, and I could find it. She said it had to have been 25 years or so.
I mean, it's not a big community, though, right?
No, it's a small community.
And you can almost, before you cross the railroad tracks, because Bancroft is down a little bit, and there are literally railroad tracks right there, you can almost see over the entire little town.
You can.
And if you know that the big river is right there, it probably didn't take you that long to find your way to the house.
Yeah. So Kitty and I pull up to my grandmother's house, and there's a fence around it. And I said, Kitty, be careful. Let's try to get their attention. It's like, yeah. And she opens the gate, and I sort of cower behind her, and she goes up into the porch. So we saw the porch, and knocked on the door, and big guy comes out. I mean, he had to weigh 300 pounds, and he had one of those vests that you put bullets in, when you're going hunting, and with the suspenders that go up. I mean, he was right out of the Appalachian cookbook, and he said, "Yeah, what do you want?" And he just blustery. And meanwhile, I'm trying to figure out how to get back to the Audi, and my sister is saying very calmly that our grandmother was Anna Osborne, and we visited their home that they're living in right now many times as a youth. And she said our mother was Ruth Martin, Anna's daughter. And he looked at us and he said, "Don't you move. I mean, don't go anywhere. Don't move." And it was that. I can't even duplicate it. Threatening voice. He was right in my face. So what are you going to do, So we stand there, and for a minute, and he walked back to a shed in the back, and he pulled out this old moldy box. You know what boxes look like after they're sitting for 20 years, and pulled it out, and he showed us this picture
That was in this frame.
in this frame of my mother, which neither of us nobody had seen before, which obviously, when my grandmother moved out, they inadvertently left it there. And he looked at us and he said, all my friends have been making fun of me for years and years, but I told them that sometime, somewhere, somebody from the family is going to come back and they're going to cherish this picture. At that point, he started to cry. And I'm starting to water even thinking about it. I mean, it was just so amazing. And, you know, he hugged us. And that's the Appalachian people. He found a thread to us. It was a family. And I think we actually were somewhat related back then. Of course, everybody is related together. And at that point, he invited us in. And my memory of the kitchen was a big coal stove there where my grandmother would fix all kinds of great smelling stuff. And there was no inside plumbing. There was no inside water.
When you were a child.
When we were a child. Yeah. There was no heat other than a fireplace. And so my grandmother would stoke the fireplace. And she would give us a warm brick to put wrapped in something cloth to put by our feet to keep warm during the night. And but he took us there, and then he insisted that we go with him up to the cemetery, and he knew exactly where everything was. And you know, when we came back, we just said our goodbyes. You know, everybody cried again, and we found out he passed away shortly after that. The longevity of West Virginians is, you know, one of the lowest in the nation, and the obesity, you know, unfortunately, and especially, you know, in that area. But you know, I should say there are lots of, you know, cosmopolitan, highly educated people in West Virginia, and so it's not like everybody says, you know, I tell people in West Virginia, and all of a sudden, you know, they want to know where my pistol is and things like that. And so it's not, everybody isn't like that, but there's a certain personality when you get into them and you get to know them that actually I like. I mean, I still, you know, I enjoy being around those type of people. One of my great friends now is a person who I contacted. Again, I put an ad in a small local newspaper saying something like, country boy stuck in the city wants to drive a tractor.
I remember this.
And this guy responded and he said, you know, when's the next shoe fall? You know, what's the problem here? And I explained, and, you know, unbelievable for me. And I went up, he turned me loose on this tractor, which I've got a picture of somewhere. And luckily, for my cars, I know how to use a clutch and all that kind of stuff. So I got it, but for several years, you know, I mowed his 20 acres, just happy as a clam, to be honest. And Lynn and I have, you know, we go up to their home several times a year just because he remains a good friend. But yeah, that was an interesting story, and that's the original frame.
Wow, that's amazing. Yeah. I love that story. I tell that story a lot too. In the classes that I teach, just how emotional it can get, and how, you know, vested people are into family history, because if you make those connections, and if you value family history, you'll do exactly what this man did, and you'll wait. Somebody will come back.
Yeah.
There's always going to be a full circle at some point in time, and it would have been a shame, you know, had he not saved that. But he valued it enough to do to save it and to wait for you guys.
And if they like you forever. Mm-hmm. I know.
Wasn't that an amazing story? And I love the way that my dad, has that personal connection to the people in some of these rural communities in West Virginia. I'm going to drop some pictures here in the video of when I was in Bancroft and of the houses, and I was there with Miss Appleby probably 4 or 5 years ago. Had a wonderful genealogy trip, as you can imagine. But we spent some time in Bancroft. We spent some time talking to the people. Bertha Phelan, if you're watching this, I still have incredible memories of the kindnesses that she showed me and my friend Sue of sitting in the church there in Bancroft and you telling me stories of my ancestors, that you remembered them from the neighborhood. So, this is an incredible legacy that we have. I have not only this artifact and the information about the Osborne side, which this came out of that bucket, but I probably have, probably 7 or 8 other buckets full of information. So there are going to be plenty of For the Boys episodes from this. Hopefully as summer comes and I can do some more genealogy, that I will be able to do more and more of these, maybe get back to doing one weekly during the summer. But for right now, we're building our portfolio of For the Boys. And this, amazing frame, has such a wonderful story to tell. And that's why we do this, is to make sure that you and your children someday, hopefully someday, will understand the stories of their ancestors. Because you know what? You're making history today. And we know that they were doing the same thing back in their own time. So good to be back here with For the Boys. And, I'll be back again soon. I love you all so much. Bye.